welcome to Society to Synapse. So you should be able to see a question on the screen there. It's asking you, of the two parasympathetic nervous systems, which we've studied in the course, which do you think is the most impactful for social interaction and why? So I'm looking for a brave soul who is actually willing to come on mic and share their answer with the class. Between the enteric and the autonomic, which parasympathetic nervous system do you think is the most impactful for social interaction and why? Thank you, Lauren.
I feel like it could depend on the social interaction, but thinking of like a new social interaction or like meeting new people, I feel like the sympathetic nervous system could play more of a role because people get like social anxiety or like can get nervous if it's not as familiar, but in just like your everyday social interaction like with your family or like if you have roommates that your parasympathetic would be more impactful because it's more of like that familiarity and like you wouldn't feel so like on edge with your social interaction, so you would feel just more like in your routine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And then how about the rest of you? Did anybody have a contrasting point of view? Did anybody kind of think the enteric might be more important? Alternately, does anybody agree that the autonomic nervous system is the most important when it comes to social interaction, but have something different to say about why? So, when does our autonomic nervous system go into rest and restore? Somebody hop on mic and tell me a little bit about the conditions that an organism needs to be under in order to go into a cycle of rest and restore. Or you can answer in the chat. So, Emily says during downtime. And it's true, when we're chilling, we're more likely to be in a cycle of rest and regenerate. Um, um, Sleep is a little complex. Jacqueline, let's put a pin in that. Emily said when there's no crisis. And that's kind of what I want to pick up on. So the fight, flight, freeze system is the body's crisis response system. And it enables you to either flee from danger, um, fight your way out of the crisis situation, or freeze up. And remember, in nature, freezing is often a great way to escape danger. And I always try to say fight, flight, freeze, because the fact is that for many of us, when we go through stressful and traumatic situations, we do freeze up. And that can be something that folks blame themselves about later, but it's part of our natural biology. And people are saying low threat. So, fight, flight, freeze gets a bad name. But the fact is, you're biologically designed to go through multiple cycles of fight, flight, freeze every single day. You are um, supposed to have the system come on and then the rest and regenerate system come along afterwards. So the rest and regenerate system is triggered by fight, flight, freeze itself. So this is sort of part of the body's never-ending quest for homeostasis. We're supposed to get keyed up. We're supposed to have intense moments every single day. And then our natural response when the crisis has passed is that our body will be triggered to go into a cycle of rest and regeneration, in which we can attend to all of the body's business. Um, whether that is, intercellular processes, growth, all of the good stuff that a body is doing when it's not in the middle of responding to a crisis. Okay, so this was a great question that Brooklyn posted up at the beginning of the semester. Can our innate responses to fear hinder life experiences and opportunities for growth? Um, I'm not even going to ask you guys to say yes or no in the chat because I think we probably are all going to agree that, yeah, the fear response can hinder us. I'm wondering if someone's willing to share an example. Hop on mic. Again, everybody is getting a participation point for today's session, so I'm hoping that I can not have to call on people, but just that you guys will all turn your mics on and be lively in the conversation for me and for our guest speaker. So, um, can someone share a time when fight, flight, freeze got in their way?
Can I go?
Yeah.
In high school, I had an interview and I had a really bad experience before, so my flight or fight kicked in for a scholarship and I kind of froze in the middle and I had to keep asking them to repeat the questions to me so I could make sure I was answering them correctly. I feel like my fight or flight kind of was kicking in that moment, not knowing how to respond.
Okay, great. And it sounds like you had more of the freeze response. And I'm sorry that you went through that. A freeze response in an interview can be an absolute nightmare. So, in this course, we are sort of meeting the brain's fear system. In Brooklyn's question, she speaks of our innate responses. And by innate, I think she means biologically based, or inborn. And remember, every brain is as unique as a fingerprint. So we all have fear systems that are differently attuned. And right now, we're meeting kind of layer zero of the fear system. Okay, do I have Sarah E on uh, the Zoom with me today?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I want to discuss your question just a bit. At the beginning of the course, you asked, does how you grew up have an impact on fight, flight, freeze later in life? And I wondered if you could say a little bit more about what you were thinking when you wrote this question.
Kind of like the environment, if your parents were more of authoritarian or if your parents were more passive, how they treated you, if that had an impact on, oh, I need to be able to solve and fix my parents' anger, or I need to be able to just be a teenager or be a child in a sense of fight or flight, having to adjust to someone else's emotions. That's what I was
Okay,
thinking when I wrote that.
okay, excellent. All right. We have a guest speaker coming in a little bit, so I have cut to the headline on this question because I think Sarah E has asked a really sophisticated question that gets at course themes. So I need you guys to know this is headline news. After you go through a traumatic event, your fight, flight, freeze system is temporarily more responsive. Okay, so look at the picture, and tell me what is wrong with our homeboy's arms.
One
What is going on?
one of them is much larger than the other.
Yeah, so I put this in here, and I don't know what would cause a person to work out only one arm in the gym, but this is sort of a representation of how it feels right after a traumatic event. The fight, flight, freeze system is on a hair trigger. Now, a class or two ago, I asked you guys about the last thing that had kicked off fight, flight, freeze for you. And I heard about car crashes and scooter crashes and word wall texts. And the fact is, after something truly traumatic, like let's take the example of a car crash that's very harrowing, but you survive, your fight, flight, freeze network is going to be extra responsive. So that's going to make you irritable. It's going to make you jumpy and it's going to make you keyed up. So, has anyone experienced that personally where you've been through something dramatic or traumatic and you're like jumpy and irritable for the rest of the day? Yeah, so that can happen. So let's extrapolate. If you have a childhood full of traumatic events, what would you expect to see about the fight, flight, freeze system of that individual as they age up and grow? Can someone hop on mic and speculate?
I think they would be more easily triggered. And I say this because my son had COVID and he had multiple system inflammation. So now every time he gets sick, even if it's just a cough, he panics, he cries, he says he doesn't want to be sick. And it's something that we've tried to cope with, but it's just really hard for him now. Even just feeling like a headache, he just panics.
Yeah, okay. And so this is in one specific kind of content area of life. He's been through a trauma related to illness. And now when he faces those kind of symptoms like a little runny nose that another kid might take in stride, I mean, kids are usually just snotty beasts and can't be bothered. Um, he's got a sensitivity and he's carrying that forward. So after a traumatic event, our fight, flight, freeze network is jumpy. So it stands to reason that after a series of traumatic events, that fight, flight, freeze network might be more powerful in an individual who grew up with a chaotic, traumatic childhood than it would be in someone who didn't grow up with those circumstances. And this is particularly true because of neuroplasticity. So, last time somebody asked about the vagus nerve, and I went and grabbed an image and popped it into the Zoom because I think this nerve is beautiful. And so you're seeing it here above me. So, we're looking at the physiology of both branches of the autonomic nervous system. And as you can see, the nerves that mediate that rest and regenerate response emerge from the tippy top of the spinal cord and the very, very base of the spinal cord. And I've kind of boxed out the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is responsible for a lot of this rest and regenerate response. Now, in neuroplasticity, we learned that neurons that fire together wire together. And furthermore, that when neurons fire together, they actually nourish each other and make each other more likely to fire in the future. So, turning on rest and digest, which happens naturally once a crisis has passed or any time that we feel safe, at peace, confident, and secure, it really is like working out a muscle. So it is this goofy picture of our guy with our uneven arms. I used it because the physiology is actually similar. So when fight, flight, freeze is triggered over and over and over and over again, through growing up in a environment where you're challenged with threatening situations over and over again, that entire network can become more responsive in a way that persists even into adulthood. On the flip side, if you spend a lot of time in rest and regenerate as a child, if your needs are mostly met, your environment it can be boisterous, it can be loud in the sense of happy, chaotic. But if you're not, facing threatening situations day in and day out, then that vagus nerve is going to be rich, healthy, and nourished, and your rest and regenerate system is going to be stronger and better able to bring you back to baseline after a stressful event. So, the two branches of this system really do handle on a very basic level, the beginnings of that emotional regulation that we're all chasing. So the intention is that after a stressful event, you naturally go into a cycle of rest and regenerate. So one of the best ways to actually trigger rest and regenerate for yourself. And we'll talk about more ways to trigger it as we keep going. But one of the best ways to trigger rest and regenerate is actually to face up to your stressors. And I know it can be so tempting to procrastinate and avoid, especially if we deal with anxiety. But what you're learning right now is that by pushing yourself and allowing yourself to go through fight, flight, freeze to get uncomfortable, you're actually building the physiology that will allow you to have a more powerful rest and restore response later in life. So, being proactive, pushing past anxiety, it hurts, but it has a psychological benefit. Someone said the lecture's free therapy. All right, I'm always aspiring to free therapy. Okay, so this image is from your textbook, and I'm contrasting the physiology of the two symptoms. So we had the vagus nerve, and we want our vagus nerve rich and juicy. We want to put ourselves into rest and regenerate all the time so that the vagus nerve is strong and healthy. Um, Now, fight, flight, freeze physiology, the main thing you'll notice here is that the nerves emerge from the center of the spinal cord rather than the tippy top in the bottom. And you'll see that there's this sort of, it almost looks like spinal cord 2, and it's a chain of ganglia that connect all the bits and pieces of the fight, flight, freeze nervous system. And the significance of this is that when you go into fight, flight, freeze, no matter what triggered it, whether it was a near miss car crash or just an email, the whole response happens at once. It's not the same with rest and regenerate. So if you eat a little something and you got some digestion to do, the vagus nerve can come on by itself and you can have a little bit of the response without the whole thing kicking off. But fight, flight, freeze is all or nothing. And that can be incredibly uncomfortable. Okay, I need another volunteer to come on mic and do us the favor of distinguishing between the symptoms of sympathetic versus parasympathetic arousal. In other words, fight, flight, freeze versus rest and regenerate. So in gray, you see there the various organs of the body that are affected by the autonomic nervous system. And in light yellow, you see one set of changes. So somebody hop on mic and say, are those changes dilating pupil, dry mouth, sweaty skin, pumping heart, are those associated with fight, flight, freeze or rest and regenerate? Yeah, Gladianne.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, that was associated with fight and flight freeze.
Great, great. Okay, and then just for glory, Gladianne, do you recall whether fight, flight, freeze is mediated by the sympathetic or parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system?
I think it's the sympathetic.
Yay! Yes, and if anyone's having trouble remembering those terms, you can think stress and sympathetic. So here in the image, we have a threat. We have a child about to go into the lake, and we have a body responding with fight, flight, freeze. So this dad is ready to save his son. And then, as soon as that stressful moment has passed, you can see that he's going to have a lot of the opposite physical changes. So, in dark yellow, you see that whereas his pupils dilated to let in more light during the threat, now his pupils have contracted. His mouth actually gets wetter, his skin dries back up, and respiration and heart rate slow. All right. How about immune function? Somebody take a look at the bottom row there. Come on, Mike, and explain to us, when is the immune system functioning better? Fight, flight, freeze, or rest and regenerate? Malia.
Um, your immune system is like more compromised during the sympathetic fight or flight, I think.
Yes, yes. And this is really problematic because we do spend a lot of time in fight, flight, freeze compared to our Paleolithic ancestors. They were able to, they went through very dramatic and traumatic situations all the time. They were literally getting attacked by wild animals. But when the stressor was over, they were able to detach, decompress, and calm down. And we have more trouble with that these days. And over time, spending too much time in fight, flight, freeze, keyed up, ready for danger, can cause you to have immune problems and some other body problems down the line. So it's really important to learn ways to get yourself out of fight, flight, freeze and trigger this rest and regenerate cycle. And as I said, we have a guest speaker coming at 2:30. So some of this lecture, I will not let it go. We'll pick up on it a little bit next time. So, fight, flight, freeze is there to pause everything that's not essential when you're battling danger. And rest and regenerate is there to help the body restore itself during downtime. And it's consequential not to spend enough time in rest and regenerate. Okay, so in the lecture videos, you guys learned some of the conditions that might make a person a little more likely to go into fight, flight, freeze. So, just in the chat, list what you remember from this part of the lecture video. So, what are some of the situations or conditions that a person might be in that make fight, flight, freeze more likely? All right, I am seeing hungry. That's a big one. And I'm seeing sleep deprivation. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, sleep deprivation is an absolute epidemic. The Homo sapien is the only creature on Earth that willfully denies itself the biologically required amount of sleep. And so, if you have trouble with anxiety, and you feel like you'd like to have less fight, flight, freeze, try allowing yourself a little bit more time for sleep and just find out. Just find out if you don't have a whole new personality when you've got more like 8.5 hours of sleep. It's easier said than done. Okay, and then Alyssa hit on temperature. Yeah, it's surprising, but something as simplistic as being too hot or too cold can make fight, flight, freeze more likely to go off. And that's because the body, when we are hungry, when we are sleep deprived, or when we are too hot or too cold, is experiencing a homeostatic imbalance. And the body is naturally more threat averse when something is already going wrong. So it kind of makes sense that if you're already hungry or you're already shivering or sweating, your body doesn't want more drama. And so it makes you a little bit more threat averse and a little bit more likely to go into fight, flight, freeze. All right. And then Emily said being in an unfamiliar environment. So familiarity is a judgment that deep architecture in your brain is making all the time. And when we're in a familiar place, the fact is we're less likely to be threatened. So this is just one heuristic that the brainstem is using to decide if it's going to be jumpy about fight, flight, freeze, or it's going to be chill today. Okay, great. Um, I think we touched on everything except for the mood piece. So again, in this course, an emotion is defined as bodily sensation and the label you put on it. So, I unfortunately went through a family funeral over the weekend and I felt a lot of sadness. And, in my body, that sadness, it felt like a heaviness, um, uh, a deep fatigue, almost an underwater feeling. And I slapped the level devastated right on top. And that was my emotion. Emotions only last a couple minutes, but moods can last days or longer. And when we're in a negative mood, fight, flight, freeze is a little bit more likely. Um, Okay, on the flip side, we also looked at a couple of ways that a person can activate their parasympathetic or rest and regenerate system. And I want to, hear what you remember from the video, but I also want to hear in the chat things that you have a hunch might activate your rest and regenerate system. So we all know what it feels like to be secure, feel all right about ourselves, to be at rest, to be chilling. So what do you think helps that system come online for you? It can be something you remember from the video, or it can be something that you just have a gut instinct, puts you in rest and regenerate. Okay, Miriam said meditation. Absolutely. Meditative practices can help the body return to rest and regenerate. A warm blanket in a cold room. Yeah, warmth in general activates the rest and regenerate system. A tight hug, Susie said. And yeah, and this hug is coming from, a welcome hug from like a positive person. That would absolutely help you tap into rest and regenerate. We have a couple mentions of various nature-based practices such as yoga and hiking. Yes, time in nature itself helps our body get enough of this rest and regenerate mode. And I want to say, the physiology of the two modes is very interesting in the fact that they are like a light switch. So you are always either a little bit in fight, flight, freeze, or a little bit in rest and regenerate. The two systems are never active at the same time, with one exception, and that is sex. Someone mentioned massage. Yeah, any form of welcome touch can bring on a cycle of rest and regenerate. So, going back to the idea of my hug with my best friend Katie that we started the class with, that would have helped put my body into out of fight, flight, freeze and deep into a cycle of rest and regenerate where my cells can do the work that is going to help, prevent cancer and heart disease and help me live a longer, healthier life. So it's really important to take the time to engage in these practices, whatever they are for you. So Alyssa mentioned grounding techniques. From my understanding, this can include walking outside with your feet in the dirt. There's a lot of evidence, that time in nature in general helps trigger rest and restore, and the sort of more immersed you get in that nature, the better. So I'll put on the screen what was actually in the video, but a lot of the stuff that you guys have mentioned that isn't necessarily on screen also can kick off rest and regenerate. You can feel it when you are in this state. So, uh, uh, this list is by no means exhaustive. So I've kind of organized it with the layers of the brain. So in terms of tending to layer one, you've got to take care of that inner lizard, feeding yourself, hydrating yourself, and getting physically comfortable. So, at the end of your shift, ditching the uniform for the pajamas, that in and of itself, that act of comfort can help trigger the nervous system into realizing that now is a great time to regenerate. I want to highlight this one because it's really critical to the themes of the course. When we want to recover from a stressor, from a traumatic or dramatic event in our day, one of the most powerful things we can do is seek out social connection because we are mammals. And those moments where we're surrounded by our friends and family are inherently going to come off as safe to the nervous system. Familiarity is also something that can help trigger rest and regenerate. An element of mindfulness, of focusing on the fact that whatever that stressor was that put you into fight, flight, freeze, it's over now. All right. Do I have Banaz here on the Zoom?
You sure do.
Okay, hi.
Hi,
All right. So, let me orient the class. So, guys, this is not all I have to say about flight, fight, freeze. It's so important. We're going to pick up with it a little bit next time. But I have something special. We have today Banaz, who is an OT, occupational therapist, and she's going to share with us some breath work tactics that are specifically designed to help put your body into rest and regenerate, to help move your autonomic nervous system out of fight, flight, freeze. So, along with the strategies we have just been discussing, I want to kind of turn it over to her so that we can learn a little bit more about breath work because it's very buzzy in culture right now, and she's going to give us a little bit of a deeper understanding of how it connects to the nervous system. So, you should
So
be able to share your screen, Banaz.
sorry, as I get I try to settle. Okay, let's try this. Bear with me. Share. Okay, so can you guys see that? Yes. Is it?
Class, yes. Okay, they're saying yes.
No, okay. Very good. Okay, let me not the most tech savvy, so I'm just moving boxes around so I can access the presentation. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me. It's such A pleasure to always, like Dr. Cook said, we are close friends. So it's just such an honor to be your guest today and just to talk about a topic that fits in so well with the discussions you've just been having. I hope you find it interesting. I hope you find one more tool that's free, that's accessible to you at any time, to help regulate your nervous system. I'm going to try to keep it brief and talk for about 20 minutes. And then after that, I can answer a few questions. We can have a discussion. I will leave you with some resources because, like I said, this is just a very basic talk today, but from the resources, you can do your own exploration if you're still interested in learning more. Okay. So, because I am an occupational therapist, I wanted to share with you the PEO-P model of occupational therapy and why I do breathwork practice. As you can see, occupational therapy is a pretty holistic practice, and so breathwork can easily fit into contexts such as culture, spirituality, physical, and environmental contexts. So, a little bit about me. My work is largely involved with supporting children's development through emotional regulation and motor skills. So, I work with kids that have developmental delays. As such, I work with parents and teachers who deal with, higher levels of stress. And so I came to practice breath work with the adults through working with the kids, um, as a way that I encourage self-care for the children's caregivers. I usually include a movement and meditation program in my practice to help alleviate tension and just help them have lower levels of stress so that they can focus and bond with their kids or their students.
Hold on. I
Yeah.
just want to jump in and I want to ask the students, are you guys able to see the slide right now that says about my work? Okay, okay. Thank
Oh,
you.
yes. Is that a yes? Okay, good. Good. Okay, good. All right. So the next slide is called A Slice of History. Hopefully you could see that too. If not, please let me know. Okay, so just a little bit about history. Why are so many of us inefficient breathers? Firstly, the Industrial Revolution influenced a lot of our lifestyles, including food textures. We started eating canned foods, soft processed foods. So humans were not needing to use as much force to chew or break down foods, now from then forward as they used to be. A lot of our sedentary lifestyles the lack of chewing led to skeletal changes, and there is skeletal evidence that our faces have changed. Our jaws and airways have grown more narrow, and humans are the only mammals with such high prevalence of crooked teeth and breathing dysfunctions. In the animal world, you will not see um, as many or prevalences. So, for instance, if you're looking at wild dogs in nature, how many of them are going to look like they need braces, right? How many of them are suffering from sleep apnea or respiratory disorders or dysregulated nervous systems that they're not able to balance. So, breathing techniques, again, are a way to help us balance. And I just want to say that they predate Western practices. We've adapted a lot of modern breathing techniques from historic cultures and centuries past. Okay, so in this slide, I do want to touch on some physiology and talk about a few key points on anatomy as well. One of the factors is our postures, right? So we have to understand that breathing is actually a 360 degree physical task where when we're spending a lot of time at our computer, on our couches, so we're might be a little bit hunched over into flexion, we don't allow the body to expand optimally on each breath. Okay. So there's a lot of talk about breathing through your nose. Why is that important? Well, first of all, breathing through your nose filters and humidifies each breath. The increased pressure from nasal breathing helps the lungs take in more air and oxygen. Nitric oxide is produced in our sinuses when we breathe through our nose. And its benefit to nasal breathing is that it produces like not specifically antibodies, but it does help to eliminate airborne viruses. Carbon dioxide is not just a waste product. It plays a critical role in helping oxygen release from our red blood cells. Once we've breathed the oxygen into our lungs and it attaches to the red blood cells, they travel to the tissue where the carbon dioxide helps to open that cage that oxygen is attached to the blood cell, and for it to be able to be absorbed by your tissues, your brain, your muscles. Okay. And carbon dioxide is a primary chemical that is being manipulated during controlled breath work.
I realize that. I don't even know my country's like that.
Okay, guys, so because I'm an OT, my job is to help people develop body awareness. And so, what does it mean when you're told to engage your diaphragm or breathe through your diaphragm? A lot of my clients have a hard time with this concept because a lot of us have adapted to breathing through our upper chest more. So I'm going to show you a short clip, and I want you to observe how the diaphragm, which is a dome-shaped muscle, um, moves down on contraction, opening space for lungs to take in air on that inhalation more efficiently. When you exhale, the diaphragm will relax and move back up, and it actually helps to push air out and expel it out of the lungs. So bear with me. I've muted it, Melissa, so I hope you guys can't hear the music. I was trying to avoid that. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit so we can really catch a nice look at this beautiful magical muscle that helps us breathe. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. You can see that the diaphragm is moving down with inhalation, making room for the lungs, moving up for exhalation. And when you are doing this, you're not just moving your belly out. When you've engaged your diaphragm, you're moving your belly forward and out to the side as well. Okay. So to the next slide. I hope you guys can't hear my dog barking. Sorry. Okay.
We can hear Sage's beautiful
I'm
barking.
so
It's fine.
sorry. Okay. I'm having a hard time getting back to the slide. Sorry, guys. Okay. Just let me know if you guys can still hear me over that, my fantastic beast. So this will look familiar to you guys, right? You guys just learned about the autonomic nervous system. And in this slide, we are going to talk about how controlled breathing methods can tap into the sympathetic and parasympathetic chains. So as you've learned now, the vagus nerve on the parasympathetic side stimulates calm, rest, digest functions. So briefly stated, when we're talking about controlled breath work, there are two categories. One is slow-paced breathing, where you're inhaling through the nose for a count and then exhaling slowly through your nose or mouth for a longer count than you inhaled. Here you access vagal tone, leading to calm and focus. The other category is referred to as cyclic hyperventilation, which involves mouth breathing in order to access the sympathetic nervous system. And it's paired with breath holds, which then dial down that system. The goal in that type of breathing, you're like, why would I want to access my sympathetic nervous system? Well, the goal is to continuously learn to get control over your stress response. So you engage and innervate this nervous system, and then you turn it down. You turn it up, you turn it down. You can learn to have more conscious awareness of your stress state, and then learn to control your stress response in daily life through this method. But the goal is always to release and center and balance your nervous system, especially essentially what we call self-regulation. Okay. Okay. So in this slide, I just want to acknowledge that breathing for wellness is a centuries-old practice from various beautiful cultures, many including religious and spiritual purposes, from Hindu chanting to Buddhist meditation and indigenous ways of life. So in modern or mainstream culture, these methods share a common goal. It's like I said, to enhance emotional and physical states and connect us to the present. For example, there's a trademark method of breath work called Wim Hof, which is becoming very, very popular. That's used that combines breathing and cold plunge techniques. Well, this method was adapted from Tibetan monks who practiced breathing techniques at high altitudes in the Himalayas, which is called Tumo or inner fire meditation, to attain a certain state of consciousness and the ability to regulate their internal temperatures in frigid conditions. So that practice is said to have dated back over 1,000 years. Okay, how to breathe into calm focus. So you may be wondering, what is the best way to implement some breathing strategies for yourself? As I caution any client I work with, if anyone has a significant cardiovascular health issue, please consult a health professional before starting any more challenging forms of breath work practice, especially hyperventilation practice. So with that in mind, you might be familiar with several different kinds of breathing where you have a specific count for each inhale or exhale, and maybe even breath holds. But my recommendation is for you to just go out and try a few of these and see what feels right for you, keeping a few important principles in mind, okay? The first is, please train your diaphragm and intercostal, like your rib muscles, so that you are doing your best to engage them in daily breath practice. And since you guys know about neuroplasticity, in time, your diaphragm will just start to kick in with less or no need for conscious control. Okay. What is the optimal rate of breathing? A lot of us are over breathers, shallow breathing or breathing too many times. And so when we are over breathing, that is actually helping our system stay in that fight or flight system. So it is an activator, or it kind of keeps you in a level of stress. So when we reduce the rate of breathing, so 5 to 6 breaths per minute, so that looks like is 5 seconds an inhale, 5 seconds exhale. It will help to increase your heart rate variability, more effectively promoting relaxation and balance in your autonomic nervous system. Blood pressure, heart rate, mental clarity, focus, sleep can be greatly improved. Mouth taping is very popular. You probably have seen it on Instagram as a method of training nasal breathing. And a lot of the times it's recommended to use it at night for sleep. I personally recommend that anyone who has a fear of, their mouth being covered, or you tend to have more narrow sinuses, just start during the daytime. Place a piece of medical tape on your mouth while you're checking your emails and just train. You can train your nasal cavity to activate and to be a better nose breather over time. Okay, humming. So that hum sound is basically a nasal exhale combined with vocal cord vibration. It's known to create a feel-good, calm sensation. The physiological explanation is that humming stimulates the vagus nerve that runs through that area of your body and promotes calm. So, for instance, if you do yoga and you've ever chanted Om, it can result, or it does result, in reducing your heart rate and deactivate the stress-related regions of the brain, such as the amygdala. I'm sure Dr. Cook may have told you about that part of the brain, or will, but just a little bit of tidbit of information. Sorry. So box breathing is very popular as well. There's a method called the carbon dioxide tolerance test that can help you determine how many seconds is appropriate for you. So box breathing involves a set of equal length of inhale, breath hold, exhale, breath hold. Okay. We don't have time to do the test today, but I have shared a link with Dr. Cook that she can share with you. And you guys can decide for yourself, like what would be the best rate. If it's too hard to hold your breath for 4 seconds or 7 seconds, it will give you an indication of where to start and where to go from there. Cyclic sighing. So Andrew Huberman is a professor of neurobiology and a researcher at Stanford. He has researched a few different techniques, including cyclic sighing, and determined that it's known as one of the most effective methods of bringing about calm in the moment. But also, if practiced for 5 minutes a day, it can keep you calm, more calm around the clock, and help you handle stress better when you're faced with it. So, how are we doing for time, Dr. Cook? I think we're not doing too bad, right?
Yeah, we're great.
Okay, awesome. So I'd like to invite you guys to do 5 cyclic sighs with me. And I'll explain it first and then we'll do it together. Okay, so what you want to do first is you're going to first exhale all the breath out of your lungs. Then what we're going to do together is we're going to deeply inhale through our nose, like a long, slow, deep inhale. And then when you get to the top of that inhale, you're going to forcefully take another short inhale. And then we're going to sigh it out. Okay. Um, and what I want to recommend is just get into a comfortable position, maybe sit forward or up in your chair so that your abdomen, like I said, can expand and you can experiment with inhaling through your diaphragm, and relaxing your neck and shoulders. You don't want to be like, right? So we're going to try to get all the body parts relaxed, and I will coach you through 5 of these. When you're ready, please exhale completely. Slowly inhale, 2, 3. Sharp inhale. Allow your exhale to be longer than your inhales, okay? Inhale. Sharp inhale. Inhale. Sharp inhale. Remember to keep your neck and shoulders relaxed. Inhale, sharp inhale. Last one. Inhale deeply, sharp inhale. Let it go. Okay. So that is 5 cycles of cyclic sighing. If you can implement that in your day for 5 minutes and do a little experiment for yourself and do it for a week, see how you feel. But that is the end of the slides. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Dr. Jack Feldman, Andrew Huberman, and James Nestor, who have influenced my practice greatly. And just, let you know that there's lots of ongoing research on not just the physiology of breath, but breath work itself. So if you pop in a search into your search engines, if you're interested in learning more.
Oh, thank you very much. I want to, if you have a moment for us, Banaz, I want to give the students a chance to ask some questions about breath work. I'm getting in the chat that a lot of people found this cyclic sighing refreshing already. But guys, do you have any questions for Banaz while we've got her? Maybe about mouth taping, about that particular breathing exercise or any other.
I have a question.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. So I'm curious. So you're an OT. So do you strictly just do like breathing exercises with them, or do you also work with like motor skills
Oh, that's
as
a
well?
great question. Yeah. So my practice is pretty diverse. It depends on what is needed, but definitely when I am working with adults, I will do a movement sequence. So like some physical stretches, body awareness, some yoga postures, and then we go into breath work. And at the end, we do meditation. So the movement helps you set your body up for the breath work, and the breath work helps you engage, become more calm, and it helps people to be able to better focus on meditation. With kids, as an OT, I practice sensory integration, I practice executive functioning skills, or work on their motor development if they have delays. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
Problem.
Um,
Yeah.
I I have something I'm curious about,
Ooh.
Banaz. In this breathing exercise that we just learned together, what is the purpose of that second sharp inhalation?
It is a great question. Okay. And so that is phrenic nerve stimulation. Okay. One thing is it's a nerve stimulation that helps to further innervate the diaphragm. But the main goal, um, if you can picture your lungs, okay, they're just balloons that are with little tiny sacs of air. The lungs themselves do not move. They need muscular innervations of the diaphragm and the ribs. So when we take that second sharp sip of air, we're further lifting open the rib cage. And what happens is, for a lot of us shallow breathers, the alveoli, the little balloons that are in our lungs, have collapsed. So when we take that sharp sip of air, it actually helps the little alveoli that have collapsed to dilate because we're changing the pressure inside the lungs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's completely fascinating.
So that second sip of air just really helps you um, activate more of your lungs so that you're getting more oxygen to your
Um,
arteries. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, do I have any other student questions for Banaz before we let her go?
I
Yeah,
see one in the chat.
yeah. Dana's asking, are there any risks to mouth taping while asleep? And then there's just the general question about open mouth breathing versus nose breathing, and maybe you can speak on both of those.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So, so far, research indicates that if you are a generally healthy person with a generally healthy, sinuses, like obviously you don't want to be taping your mouth if you have occlusions or if you have issues. For some people, if you have a very narrow airway, you may not want to start with taping your mouth at night. But generally, there aren't. And the reason is if you're doing it correctly or the way that it's recommended, you're not going to tape your whole mouth shut. You're just going to place like a 2-inch piece of tape over the center of your lips. So really, if at night, you're needing to take an inhale, or if you stopped breathing because you have sleep apnea, you will still be able to get some air in. You're not trying to train your mouth to be like never open. You're just trying to close it enough so that you're engaging your nose. So it is generally a safe practice. Okay.
All
So
right. Oh, sorry.
to answer more questions, there's a question that says, any chance these also work with open mouth breathers? So, Alejandra, are you referring to um, like the breathing strategies that we just mentioned, or the cyclic sighing?
No, you actually answered my question pretty well. It was
I
just
did.
kind of comparison which exercise worked best for open mouth
Oh, okay, okay.
versus. Thank you.
Gotcha. No problem. Oh, is there any breathing exercises that are better for children? Yeah. The breath work that I do with adults is very different than breath work with kids. Kids are generally not very interested in focusing on their breath. So as my, therapy is often play-based, if I'm working with a child that's a heavy mouth breather, and we're trying to, or they're breathing so rapidly when they're stressed out, what I will do is I will get them to experiment with blowing through a straw to get a little pom-pom into a target, or blowing a bubble. How big can you get it? So the goal with kids is first to just slow down their breathing, and or blowing on a little windmill. Just they need more visual feedback to be able to control their breath. So that's one method, is the play-based. Um, why we have been evolving to have more narrow jaws and airways. Yes, so Jack Feldman's extensive research with skeletal samples of, say, over 100 years ago. We are just more sedentary than we were before. We are not moving our bodies the way we moved them before. We were historically chewing on raw vegetables and like tough meat, but we've evolved to eat very soft foods. So when you think of like fast food or canned food, we are not exercising our jaws. The second thing is we've become shallow mouth breathers, right? So as a result, we are no longer like, when you breathe through your nose, you are placing your tongue on your palate, right? On the roof of your mouth. That slight pressure, if you can think of it like anything like braces or any oral tools that we use to apply pressure to the mouth. When you are a regular nose breather, your nasal passages are going to be naturally wider because we have the pressure from the tongue on the roof of the mouth and palate. So just multiple things. the stress response in our lives, right? We do operate in our society with far more stress. And when we are stressed out, we're more likely to breathe through our mouths. So again, it's a cycle, the evolution. It says, is nose breathing better while working out? It is better while at rest or working out. However, it doesn't mean that you should not use your mouth to breathe when you're gasping for air. However, you can train yourself to be jogging and breathing through your nose. So it's all a matter of like if you use it, if you exercise it, you can use it. If you don't use it, you lose it. So why it's better, again, it goes back to the fact that you're further inflating your lungs when you breathe through your nose. So it's just more optimal. It's just like eating, right? Like you can breathe through your mouth and be alive, but you're not as focused. It's like I can eat pizza every day and I can live, but it doesn't mean I'm healthy.
I need to claim the last just couple of minutes of the class. So
Sure.
unfortunately, I have to cut us off there. But we did get a question, just a general question about your favorite breath work. So if you're willing, Banaz, to send us a follow-up, maybe like a longer video on YouTube that my students could practice either this particular style we learned together today or any other beneficial breathing style. I'll post that to their course website so that they have a longer breath work guided practice.
Absolutely. And the quick and short is I love box breathing, but do the carbon dioxide tests and do it for yourself. So I will send that to Dr. Cook. Thank you guys so much for your questions and for your interest and your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very, very, very much, Banaz. And my students do not leave yet. I have to give you just a little 5-minute orientation to the reading that we are going to be engaging in next time. So we will not get off the autonomic nervous system because there was a lot of interest in this topic. We are all stressed out. We are all chasing that emotional regulation. So I actually, you'll see me flip through it. I have a whole bunch more in this slideshow, including about how your brain decides whether or not you're going to be in fight, flight, freeze at any given moment. So we're going to spend half our time still on fight, flight, freeze next time. But we do have this paper about co-regulation, and I want to kind of tip you off to how to read it because I think it'll be helpful. So first of all, when you go to read the paper, please take your main character's cheat sheet and have it handy because the paper is going to discuss, in particular, oxytocin and cortisol. And we have not engaged in Unit 3 and learned about these substances yet. So you might need that cheat sheet just to help you understand these substances and why they would be relevant to parent-child interaction. So, what co regulation is all about is the natural process by which any two folks in a dyad become what neuropsychologists call neurally attuned. And that's just a fancy way of saying that substances and brain activity are correlated between the two people in the dyad. So in our paper, they're going to be looking at parent-child dyads, but this process of co-regulation of nervous systems getting in sync when we spend time together can also happen with spouses, it can happen with siblings, it can happen in all kinds of social interactions. So as you can see, it's kind of key to themes of the course. So here are just a few parenting practices, some of which we've discussed in the class already, such as baby wearing and baby feeding. But we see mothers and fathers playing with their kids, taking them on walks. And I'm asking you to think about how these practices, parenting practices, would lead to this neural attunement. So I'm giving you some questions to kind of read for that I think will help you cut through the density of this paper. All right, so we have this beautiful mammal, this nursing kitten, because we are mammals, and this is exactly the type of parenting behavior that regulates nervous systems. So I want you guys, as you read the paper, to think to yourselves, is fight, flight, freeze correlated between the mother and the baby and at different age points? So look in the paper for that answer. I'm also curious. I want you to search the paper for these answers. How does being carried affect the baby in terms of fight, flight, freeze? And how does breastfeeding affect either the mother or the baby in terms of fight, flight, freeze? So these are all about the autonomic nervous system. So breastfeeding, baby carrying, and then just this general idea of are the autonomic nervous systems of parent and child synced up? Secondly, and use the cheat sheet. I want you guys, as you delve into the paper, to read for this question. Are hormonal levels of stress hormones and feel-good hormones correlated parent to child? I want you to, in particular, pay attention to oxytocin, which again is a feel-good hormone that promotes trust and social bonding. So, are higher levels of oxytocin related to particular parenting behaviors? And then on the flip side, we have our stress hormone, cortisol, that we haven't talked about much in the course, but it is released during the body, it's released in the body during long-term stressors. So are cortisol levels related to parenting behavior? So these are some of the kinds of questions we're going to discuss when we come back together to talk about the paper co-regulation. But that'll just be the second half of class. I'm going to hit you with some more tips and hacks to get yourself out of fight, flight, freeze. We'll practice the breathing exercise again because I too found it very useful and very helpful. And I have some other biohacks to share. All right. That's it. I'm going to go off cam for just 2 minutes, but then I have office hours right here on this Zoom. So anyone who needs to can stay around. And yeah, don't forget to say thanks if you haven't already said something in the chat, because that is how I take attendance. And thank you, Banaz. Thank you for being with us. All right. I will be right back for office hours, you guys. Okay, hi. I only have one participant. Miriam, did you have a question for office hours?
No, Professor, sorry. I'm getting ready for my next class.
Okay,
Okay.
no worries, no worries. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna hang around just in case anyone else has anything, but you can exit as soon as you're ready.
Okay, thank you.